and now I'm going to get more time putting this piece of trash out than he ever got for hurting my family and the ones that I love.
Over the summer, ABC57 News brought you an exclusive jailhouse interview with that Elkhart man you just heard from, accused of murdering a convicted sex offender.
During that interview, Nicholas Stanley made a full confession. And now for the first time, you'll hear a new voice coming forward to defend the victim, Alan Cogswell.
ABC57 investigative reporter Annie Kate takes us inside the confession.
You said that you were sitting on the couch and you actually watched the story as it aired. What was that like, and what was your reaction?
Initially, I was ecstatic to see, my brother getting his side of the story out and everything, but when he dropped a certain bomb during the news segment, my stomach kind of just was like, oh no, Nicholas, why would you say something like that?
I did what I had to. I took him out.
His news story became an international sensation.
That story was broadcast on our airwaves July 2nd. Since then, it's gone viral. The story of a man admitting to killing another, taking his form of justice into his own hands. We'll hear what he had to say again, but first, let's start from the beginning with that shooting in Elkhart.
Elkhart City's call. It's going to be at the daylight room. Check around room 251.
Elkhart police were dispatched to the Daylight Inn on Cassopolis Street just before 1 a.m. June 24th. 35-year-old Alan Cogswell was found shot and killed at the scene in room 251. Cogswell recently released from prison barely a month prior. It took investigators from the Elkhart County Homicide Unit about a day to identify and arrest their suspect, 35-year-old Nicholas Stanley.
Police quickly put the pieces together. Alan Cogswell was in prison on 2018 charges of child pornography and molestation. And Nicholas Stanley knew the victim. It was his relative. As he sat in jail after that shooting, I got a Facebook message from his sister, Jessica.
There's my brother's mugshot plastered all over the local news stations.
We met outside the Elkhart County Jail. Jessica explains, Alan Cogswell was released from prison early. He served about 6 years of a 12-year sentence. The family of the victim telling me they had no idea.
My heart sank, actually. My stomach physically hurt.
A few days later, I logged on for a pre-arranged video call with the suspect himself, Nicholas Stanley.
We are 100% on the record.
I asked him what happened on June 24th, and he didn't hold back.
Grabbed my gun, and I drove out to go find him. And then when I found him, I did what I had to. I took him out. I'm tired of pretending like I did something wrong. I don't feel like I did anything wrong, and there's thousands of people out there that agree with me. I'm just tired of pretending that I have to be scared of the system when he obviously wasn't scared of the system.
As I was interviewing Stanley, Jessica and family, along with the group Bikers Against Predators and others, standing up for Stanley and protesting what they call lenient prison sentences for sex offenders.
Stanley seemed to understand the consequences he was facing, and the very next day after his story aired was his initial hearing. But here's the thing, he didn't have legal representation yet. In fact, the judge did not make Nicholas Stanley plead. The judge entered a not guilty plea on his behalf. I spoke with Elkhart County's prosecutor, Vicki Becker, about this. She says that's common practice. The defendant needs an initial hearing to learn his charges and constitutional rights, but without a lawyer present, they will enter a not guilty plea. That plea has not changed since.
I get stopped by, when I'm at the store and everything, by completely random strangers. Hey, you're Nicholas Stanley's sister, aren't you? We saw you on the news. Tell him we're praying for him.
What was that like to be reached out to by these big publications because of a local news story?
Yeah, I couldn't believe, like I said, it hit Newsweek and everything, like a small, Indiana town having this huge news story. I never would have thought that it would have reached the likes of that.
Jessica Stanley was unable to hire a lawyer for her brother and even tried crowdsourcing for legal expenses. But those efforts were all for naught. GoFundMe has a policy against raising money for someone accused of a violent crime.
So many people in the community were siding with Nick, and they felt that, yeah, we'll put money forward to help raise money for his defense, and it was just gone like that.
So you knew that you weren't going to be able to hire your own lawyer?
Yeah. we definitely lost, any way of retaining one for sure. We know a high-profile lawyer like that would run about $100,000, but at least getting a retaining fee, we were going to try and figure out how to get access to extra money like that. But it was just, once that retaining fee money was gone, I had no hope after that.
Elkhart County Chief Deputy Public Defender Bridget Faulkner is assigned to Stanley's case, but he wants a new lawyer. Stanley sending me an email from behind bars saying, quote, "She told me the plea deal is the difference between dying in prison or dying a free man," which is just a terrible argument and hopefully isn't reflective of her skills as a public defender. "The only plea I have received is a 55-year sentence, so I might as well take it to trial to see how the jury feels," end quote. Stanley wants this to go to a jury, and trial is currently set for March of 2026. In the meantime, his 2 children, safe with their mother, miss their dad. He has a sister, Jessica, steadfastly by his side, keeping communication going multiple times a week. But what if we told you this was a story about 2 sisters, both fiercely defending their brothers? We met with the sister of Alan Cogswell, who we are keeping anonymous at her request. We'll call her Jane. We're back with ABC57 News Investigates the Confession. Before the break, we met with the sister of Alan Cogswell, the convicted sex offender Nick Stanley admitted to killing. Now, we are keeping her anonymous at her request and calling her Jane. Why did you want to be a part of this story?
I just thought that people should know about Alan's story as well before they judge.
We met in downtown Elkhart.
Tell me who Alan Cogswell is to you.
He's my biological brother. We have the same mom and different dads. We were adopted together, grew up on and off together.
Jane tells me Alan had a rough upbringing.
I got adopted at age 8 and he was 10. And when I was 12, he started lashing out.
She tells me Alan Cogswell had clear signs of severe mental illness growing up.
He would explain it to me like there were demons in his head telling him what to do, and he didn't have the power to resist.
He was in and out of various programs as a kid, she says, but ultimately, his adoptive parents terminated their rights when he was a young teen, after he allegedly got violent and threatened the entire family. And Jane lost contact with her brother for a time.
And I don't think he ever got the help that he needed.
His 2018 prison sentence wasn't his first, but each time he was behind bars, Jane was there.
Do you know what his other charges were for, what his other sentences were for?
No.
No?
I couldn't tell you to save my life, no.
Wow,
okay. But we always tried to stay in contact whenever he was in prison and write him and talk to him, and he'd write me back.
And it didn't bother you that you didn't need to know what he went to prison for?
No. He's my brother, and he was always gonna be my brother.
After Cogswell was killed, Jane says she read a letter from him, addressed to her but never sent.
His foster dad came to Elkhart and got his stuff from the hotel and brought me everything Alan, well, not everything, but most of everything Alan had. And one of the papers that he had was a letter that had never been sent, explaining that he had suffered sexual abuse. So that's what he grew up knowing, and it wasn't just like one time, like he was forced over and over and over to do it.
Jane sees her brother as a victim who went on to continue the cycle of abuse.
I feel like before they judge him, others should know that he was traumatized as well. And no, it doesn't give him the right to traumatize others. But they should know before they judge.
She says she truly believes he understood what he did was wrong and that he wanted to be better and would have been had he been able to live.
Everybody just look at the cover and it's child molester and they're like, he's a bad person, he's awful. But what he grew up with was awful. He didn't understand what he was doing was wrong until he was older.
She says she didn't believe the call she got from her bio mom on June 24th, sharing the news of Alan Cogswell's murder.
I am a firm believer in God has a punishment for everybody. And I'm not sure if Alan was a believer or not, but it was not Nick's right to judge him and murder him. It's God's right. And he took it upon himself. And taking a life is still murder. It's still murder no matter what reason you have behind it.
The very next day after Cogswell's death, she says, she was at church where the lesson preached was forgiveness.
And right there, I felt God putting his hand saying, you need to forgive him. You cannot be angry, you need to forgive him. So I want Nick to know that even though he believes he did what is right, it was not right, but I forgive him.
Yeah, you can forgive and forget, but the victim can't forgive, the victim can't forget. And, you know, at the end of the day, should this have happened? No. Was there a different way that this approach could have been dealt with? For sure. Is it the extreme end of things? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, what happened, happened. There's no taking it back. But, you know, it happens. And unfortunately, this was the end result. So, you know, when somebody takes the matter into their own hands because the police and the law won't, extremes are definitely reached.
Jessica Stanley tells me her brother Nicholas suffers from mental health issues and was off his meds. Not to mention, he lost his mother in February. Jessica says he took it very hard, and he lost his job.
He lost access to his health insurance, and then he lost access to both of his therapists and his medications. So my brother had unfortunately not been on any medications when this incident occurred in June.
Stanley told me he lost his mind when he discovered Cogswell was released.
So I was actually the one who did in fact find out that Alan had gotten out, because that relative was terrified and was having nightmares. I would call them premonitionary nightmares, but they were having nightmares that he was out. And so to try and calm them down and quell it, I looked him up and was taken aback by the fact that he was out.
So you looked him up because your relative was having nightmares?
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, and they were true, that he was in fact out.
Jessica tells me no one was notified of Cogswell's parole hearing, nor his release, meaning the victim didn't have a chance to make a victim impact statement in court.
We wouldn't be here today if he had still been in prison. We would not be where we are right now if they had just kept him locked up.
Cogswell was released 6 years into his 12-year sentence.
You know, these children are pretty much sentenced to trauma their whole entire lives, whereas these men and women get a slap on the wrist.
I was able to get the mother of the victim Alan Cogswell abused on the phone, and she corroborates what Jessica told me. They had no idea Cogswell was being released early.
Nope, nobody was aware of the situation. It happened years ago, so I mean, I knew eventually he was going to be getting out. I had obviously hoped that I would never have to hear his name again. We swear that they said that we would be notified of what's going on with.
I dug into this a bit. Turns out Indiana implements a statewide automated victim information and notification, or SAVIN, program to alert victims of such updates. But the victim or victim's family must register to get these updates.
What I found out was that to get these notifications, you had to be registered with this program. Were you registered with that program?
Nope, never heard of it.
You know, nobody was there to speak for the victim, and so he just got out.
This means Jessica spread the news of Cogswell's release.
Hey, he's out. I'm just letting you guys know this. And my brother didn't say anything about it. He read it, left me on red, and just didn't say anything about it.
But Stanley told me he took matters into his own hands. And now he faces another charge on top of murder: illegal possession of a firearm by a domestic batterer. That charge informed by Stanley's prior record, which he successfully expunged.
So he actually had all of his record expunged earlier this year because he was wanting to join the local fire department. He wanted to become a firefighter. I was like, how did they unseal that if it was all expunged? Like, I don't think that was right by the prosecuting attorney's office.
Elkhart County Prosecutor Vicki Becker cannot talk about the facts of Stanley's case in any way, shape, or form ahead of trial, so she cannot discuss his criminal history. But she did speak generally about how expungements work.
Expungement is not a situation where it goes away forever. It is a situation where if certain conditions or exceptions apply, then the court can unseal the records.
It may be uncommon, but it does happen, she says.
So where does this leave us? Nicholas Stanley has a hard battle ahead of him, and he faces decades in prison. Despite the outcome of his case, he's receiving an outpouring of community support. His sister Jessica steadfastly by his side. Alan Cogswell isn't here to share his side of the story, but his sister is here to remind us he was a person too. Two sisters, loyally defending their brothers.
I know what he did was wrong, but he was my brother, he was my support, and I loved him for all it was worth.
I love him. He's my little brother. I'll always love him. When everybody else is, dead and gone, I'll be the one, if it happens to be, I'll be the last one there for him.
Now, Nicholas Stanley remains behind bars and on his murder charge, and he has some hearings, pre-status conferences in January, February, and his trial right now is set for March 2nd of 2026.
Ooh, very, very powerful stories, two completely different perspectives, powerful perspectives.
Incredible interviews, really, Annie. The full jailhouse confession is very unusual. You just don't see that. How is Nick Stanley's attorney dealing with that as they get ready to go to trial? What do you think is going to happen with that?
Absolutely. Well, as we heard from Stanley and his sister, he's been offered plea deals. However, I did try to get a hold of Nicholas Stanley's public defender myself. I left my name and number at the office a couple times, and I had not heard back ahead of this story. And of course, I'm still open to that conversation as we move forward and continue to monitor this story and as it prepares to go to trial.
And you will be in court when that trial starts, I hope.
Absolutely.
All right. Annie Kate, very well done. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
More local news coming your way next.